Hello Internet. Today's video is going to be about cleaning up this nasty smelling Asus Strix 4090 or what's left of it. But regardless, today we're going to be looking at how do we go about cleaning this thing, taking it apart and all that good stuff. So if anybody's interested how to take these things apart, this is going to be the process. So we're going to start with the front. There's 3 screws here, I believe. So 1, 2, and 3. And by the way, I have no idea if this thing works or not. This thing did not come in for repair. It came in for service. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to service it. And hopefully it works. Okay, so on the back, we got a few more screws. Let me zoom out so you can see a little better what I'm doing. A few screws around the perimeter of the back. That's a very heavy card. This is probably the heaviest 4090 card that you can get. A lot of times, if these are not supported or damaged during shipping, the board suffers so much damage it's pointless to even try to fix it. Just replace the board or switch to something else, something a little bit more friendly, like MSI, for example. I don't know. I like MSI. Okay. Spring screws here. Move that over there. And that should come out. There we go. So I'm not going to worry about the pads on the back. These are perfectly fine. They're hardly serve any purpose anyway. Quick visual, make sure no rust, nothing like that. Things look kind of okay-ish. So we're going to need a smaller screwdriver here. So when you're undoing these, press on these leads to relieve the pressure a little bit while you're undoing the screw, so that way you don't force the screw out. So we got one out, then remove the other one on the opposite end and finish up with the rest of them. Do not unscrew one or the other all the way out, but rather unscrew them about halfway out, so that way you're relieving the pressure rather than completely loosening, removing the screw out of the hole. That way you do not. That way you kind of relieving the pressure slowly rather than relieving the pressure from each corner individually, which isn't a good thing. Okay, so now, normally if the card had never been opened before and has been used for a while, it's going to be really tough to get it separated from the heatsink. So what you want to do is you want to go really, really slow and careful. There's a certain amount of flex that the board will allow, as you can see here. So the more you flex it, the more likely you're going to either rip a pad under the core or under the memory, or just brick solder connection in between somewhere. So generally speaking, probably the worst card in the world to separate would be EVGA 3090, 3080 Ti, whatever. Yeah, because they're using paste on the coils, and those get rock hard after a while, and it's like extremely difficult. So the way I do those is probably be the exact same way you would want to do these. Is you want to find a couple of spots, you know, where to pry, and just apply tension. You don't want to pry against the board itself if there are any components. So kind of try to pry the board rather than prying against the components. If you get lucky enough and you can actually squeeze, find a spot where you can get some kind of a pry tool up against the coil, that will work fine, yeah. But never squeeze, never apply any tension against small components like that. So just depends. You're gonna have to look at and see how the board behaves and whether it starts to separate on one end then better than on the easier than on the other. So I just kind of pry it out. Looks like we have access to coils here and there, and just kind of apply tension and just kind of hold it there, and you will see it moves really slowly, but continue on applying a little bit of pressure. Try to see as little board flex as possible. Let's see. Sometimes, okay, there we go. Sometimes the I/O is kind of hooked a little bit over to the edge of the cooler, like you see here. Let me show you actually. So there's like a little ledge here, and the I/O likes to hook onto that. So keep that in mind when you try to separate the two, so that way you don't accidentally apply excessive pressure. So now, since this is Asus, we have connectors that are latched. So, and the latch is on the back. Thank you, Asus. See, there's a latch right there that I had to squeeze the connector on the back. And the connectors here are relatively easy to undo. They are also latched. Okay, so we're gonna, that's basically what the card looks like here. And that's what the cooler looks like. But we need to clean the cooler because the cooler is in a terrible condition. I normally, almost 99% of the time, don't care about the pads on the driver MOSFETs or the coils. These are almost never a problem. So we could leave those alone, or we can replace them, either way. So the memory pads here, I don't know what their thickness is, so we're gonna find out. So I'm gonna scrape them with the razor blade and measure and see what we can gather. So it looks like a 1.29, so that would probably translate roughly to 1.25 on the pad scale. Let's see if I can scrape this one off a little bit. See if I can. Yeah, this one's 1.25. Okay, so it looks like we need pads that are 1.25. Another way to measure this is knowing that the height between the top of the die and the top of the memory chip is 2 millimeters. You can just measure. See, what some of these card manufacturers, what they like to do is they like to weld, because they're saving money on building a proper size vapor chamber that would be large enough to contact the memory chips, not just the core. What they do instead is, you kind of see that they just welded a piece of metal on top of the vapor chamber, because the vapor chamber simply doesn't extend far enough, so they welded this on. And so in order for us to figure out the height difference, I just measured the height between here and there, like so. You see, I'm using my pen, and I'm getting, what am I getting? Hold on a sec. I'm getting just under a millimeter. It's a little tricky here. There's no way that these pads are going to be 1 millimeter thick, but we're going to have to verify. So that's just one way to figure this out. So we're getting 0.85. So if we were getting 0.75, that would give us an indicator that the pads are exactly 1.25, but we're getting a little bit more. So 1.25 pads should work just fine, because they will compress a little bit. So now what I want to do is I want to get the thing out of there. I want to get this thing out. So I kind of wonder about the pads on the coils as well. What is their size? I'm guessing it's the same. Let's see. No, these are probably 1.5. So 1.25 and 1.5 everywhere else. We're gonna throw these in here, and we'll deal with them later. So right now I want to detach the cooler or the heatsink from the frame. So let's undo these screws here and see what happens. So nothing really happens, except that the whole thing is inside and it's loose. But how do we get it out? I think that we need to undo the screws that are here so that we can get access to the fans. And hopefully it's just these 4 screws. 3, 4. I think we should be able to. Yeah, it's starting to come out, but it feels like something's holding it on the back, like the LED port of some sort. So maybe we might have to undo these screws here as well. Put them there so that we can move the LED panel backwards a little bit. Is that what I want to see? It looks like it's almost wants to come out, but not 100%. Or maybe it does. I'm not really sure. I've never taken these things apart to that degree. So it looks like it might wants to come out. Maybe I can undo these screws here as well. Maybe that'll help. And that made no difference. What else could I possibly detach here? Let's get those wires out of the way. Push them from under the frame to the outside. And let's see what else is holding it down. It feels like something's holding it down on the back, but I don't really see anything. Maybe nothing holding it down. Maybe it's just these wires here. This is a little bit unusual. Okay, let's see if we can just get the frame out, like so. See if we can. All right, so let's not worry about the LEDs. Let's squeeze the wires out like so. Just get the whole thing out with the frame, and that way we don't have to detach the LED circuit from it. And I think that's good. That's good right there. So now we have full access to the frame. We have full access to the radiator, which will go into a bath. And the fans are going to have to be cleaned manually, such as vacuum will probably do. So let's vacuum these thing out. As you can see here, I've already cleaned the radiator, and it turns out that this small metal block actually it comes from through the back, so the hole is there. That's where it gets inserted, and then it just passes through and into here. That's where we get to secure it back into the frame. So let's go ahead and do that. There's 1, 2. Now you can go as detailed as you like with these fans. I just don't see any reason to detail them to a point of perfection. So it's just it's really up to you. You can go as far as you like. As far as the board goes, so these are gonna be 1.5 probably. just like the rest of the driver MOSFET pads. A little bit of dust on the board right there. Get that core cleaned up. You don't want to be aggressive near the core. No pressure, just, I mean, light pressure, but don't push too hard on it. It's not particularly fragile, the core itself, it's the board. The board does not like to flex. The core, you can probably hammer nails with the core, but the board is not going to enjoy it. So, alright, let's clean up the mess on the table here. There we go. So let's go figure out the pads. I generally start putting pads on the board rather than on the cooler. So we know we need 1.25 on memory, and we need 1.5 on the coils. We're going to on the driver MOSFETs. We're going to verify all that in just a second. Just gonna cut a couple of strips. One's gonna go here. Perfect fit. Somehow. That doesn't happen all the time. And this one fits perfectly as well. Alright. We also need a few more pieces around these guys here. So let's cut a piece like that. Then we're going to cut it in 4 and place them where they belong. Alright, we're done with 1.5. Now with 1.25 on the memory. Now the thinner the pad, the better. But at the same time, the larger the vapor chamber, the better. So I would prefer larger vapor chamber than thinner pads. Gigabyte uses thinner pads. Depends on the card. I don't know exactly which model, but it works a lot better. So if you can find a card that uses 1mm pads and memory, that's going to be the coldest memory that you can get. So there we have it here and there. Almost. There we have it. That looks promising. We need to verify that these thicknesses will actually work. The way we do this is by pre-assembling the card to a certain degree. We're gonna apply some cheap thin paste. You don't want to do this with a thick paste, you want a thin paste so it spreads easier. That way you don't have to apply excessive pressure to the board. And position the board, put it on the cooler, and I guess we sort of press it down, gentle wiggle and lift, and look at the paste spread. We have a good spread of paste. We have some impression on the memory chips. As you can see, there's a little bit of impression on the pad, and the pad stuck to the cooler, as well as the chips had left the impression on them. So that's an indicator that we have a proper contact with the pads and the core and the cooler. Gonna wipe that off, apply a new paste. This time we're gonna be using good paste. I think GD2 is the best paste to get. It's dirt cheap and it works really extremely well. I just can't emphasize enough how well it works, and it seems to last also. So that's what I'm using for all of my repairs, and I'm using it for myself as well. Now let's figure out what we do with these with the connectors here. Okay, so the connectors are gonna be inserted like so. This one, that one, and the last one, and that should be it. Now all we gotta do is to put everything back together. Now with the leaf spring, maybe a couple of turns, 3 turns, go to the other end. And what I hate about Asus is that they like to cross thread. So I always apply pressure to the end and try to drive the screw in as gently as I can. If I start feeling any kind of resistance, you back out. That way you don't strip the screw. So another thing about Asus that I absolutely do not like is that they can't seem to make their leaf springs. MSI makes really nice leaf springs. I don't know. That's just another reason to like MSI. Okay, let's put the back plate on. Like I said, I'm not going to worry about these pads here. Yeah, they provide very little cooling anyway. Now let's see if everything's lining up. And basically assemble everything in the reverse order as before. Now normally I wouldn't go about cleaning the radiator, but this time there was a lot of hair, so there was no other way but to get it all cleaned out. And you know, especially with the fans. But normally that's not required, as long as there's a good airflow, and just because there's a layer of dust buildup, that doesn't necessarily affect the cooling so much so that you would have to get it clean with a toothbrush, you know, get it all nice detailed and whatnot. But finish up the ones at the I/O plate in here. We're not exactly getting this cart ready for spotlight on the TV, so it doesn't need to be sparkling clean. It just needs to be clean, needs to be functional, and so a little bit of dust here and there, not gonna worry about. Maybe wipe the power connector just a little bit so it looks like I actually did something. Maybe a little bit of dust here, you know, little things, just to make it look like I actually did something, so that the customer don't feel bad paying for it. And plug it in. Make sure there's no melting anything inside the connector, and we're gonna run a few tests, make sure that all temps are good, and hopefully everything checks out. If not, then there may be an issue with the vapor chamber, because the thermal interface is done correctly, and if it still fails to cool the card, then there's a problem with the vapor chamber, at which point I can't do anything about. Customer's gonna have to get a new vapor chamber, or basically a cooler. The good thing is that it's a 4090. There's a ton of coolers and donor boards available, and they're not even that expensive. You could probably get a cooler for like $60 to $100 with free shipping. So who knows? In any event, hopefully this was educating and maybe entertaining to some. Thank you for watching, and have a blessed day. Goodbye.